Okay, Craig Lane, YouTube channel, November 27th, no, December, what's the date today? 18th, December 18th. That's right, it's the week before Christmas. We're gonna talk about winter transition because we're right there on the cusp, and we're actually in the, this is a good thing to talk about actually, we're in the cusp, the week before and after the seasonal transitions is a good time for fasting. And I've been monitoring this for about 20 to 25 years, and generally the appetite tends to fall during these times of year for me because there's more of a desire to see what's going on in the higher planes or the less dense planes, I guess. And so I think that throughout history, they viewed these times to fast or purify because what's available from the cosmos is just greater than any other time of the year. So you have your solstices and your equinoxes are very powerful times to get really clear. And I used to lead a lot of group cleanses during these windows, but they're generally not convenient. You know, like right before Christmas is not a good time to cleanse. It's like the worst time in the world to cleanse because you're heading into like indulgences, you know, and drinking and, you know, I mean, in America, at least, we're kind of American centric, aren't we? You know, I get this American centric attitude, you know, but whatever the tribal people is, you know, they don't care. Woohoo! Gregorian New Year, you know. You know, they couldn't give a crap. You know, so here we are in our American centric world with a Gregorian calendar. So there's a process occurring right now where we're heading into this like December 20th, 21st is like this, it's the peak of the contraction. The energy's been doing this, it's been gathering and gathering and gathering. And that's kind of what this model here is about, is we have to shed off the old. The autumn's about letting go. And in some, you know, every year it's like letting go of the warmth of the summer that, you know, we have our 50-degree winters, ooh, you know, gonna get in trouble. And then the seed can sprout once you let go of the old. And in psychology, it works that way too. You know, if we don't let go of what's stuck in our craw, so to speak, it's really hard to bring something new in. You know, like an old partner, if you have somebody that broke your heart and you don't let go of it, you know, it's really hard to get a new partner, isn't it? Because there's still that empty space that you haven't filled with your own love. You know, we try and fill that void usually from the outside. Wrong, you know, it's trapped. So that's kind of what we're in now, is this peak of this contraction, because we know because the light is getting less and less and less and less. And the peak acceleration is on November 1st. The Day of the Dead is when the contraction is like really accelerating. It's not accelerating as much now, but it's going to hit its peak where I have a client in Alaska. I was talking to him the other night, and you know, he's got like a half hour of evening. Right at noon, they get like right now they get like a half hour of barely, you know, it's like evening time, and then 23 and a half hours of darkness up in Anchorage, you know, and I'm like, no wonder the guy's depressed, you know. So got him on vitamin D3 and cod liver oil and a bunch of herbs, and he's like happy as a clam now. And so it's not a validation for some form of sunlight. I don't know what is, you know. Yeah. So that's something that's worth talking about, and I have it on another slide over here. Well, a few weeks ago we talked about the 6 pernicious influences from Chinese medicine and in general, and so one of them is heat and excessive vitamin D, which it's rarely spoken about, but when you get tired when you're in the sun a long time, that's vitamin D toxicity. And we don't talk about that a whole lot. And our ancestors knew about this other vitamin called vitamin F, and Royal Lee talked about it. And so there's a product in the standard process line called Cataplex F, which our native peoples, they weren't doing all this, but Royal Lee was a savant formulator, and he put together cow prostate and flax seeds and liver bovine extract and iodine. And I take this every day for 10 years, and I don't use an oral sunscreen anymore. Literally don't need it. And it's also used to get nutrients. The action of vitamin F is to get food and nutrients into your cells. The action of vitamin D is to get nutrients into your blood. You see, they're opposing actions. So if you're in sunlight too long, literally nutrients leaves your skin and your nerves and your muscles and goes back into your bloodstream. And that's why I used to be a professional beach going guy, and I would nap on the beach all afternoon after 10 to 12 hours of sleep at night. Like, how come I just got 10 hours of sleep? I'm so tired in the sun. I figured it out. So sunstroke is vitamin D overdose. That's what sunstroke is. And we weren't taught that very well. But as a surfer, I've been in the sun every day for 40 years, you know, and you got to figure this stuff out when you're out in the ocean with the glare, you know. Skiers know that, you know, the glare of the sun off the snow, you get a double effect of the sun and the sunburn. So right now is when those stores of sunlight, if you will, we talk about our fat soluble 25 hydroxy vitamin D on your lab work. Well, that's just a marker of the stored vitamin D in your blood. It has nothing to do with the active form. So it has nothing to do with your day-to-day life, these vitamin D numbers, 0. And so this is where your sunlight reserves get used, right? If you're in Alaska, this poor guy, you know, if I was living in Alaska, I would be in the sun every moment of every day I could, because I know those, you know, from November, December, January, it's like, oh my God, I'm not going to see the sun. I mean, I wouldn't choose to live like that. Would you guys choose to not see the sun for 3 freaking months out of the year and then have too much sun for 3 months in the summer? Like, 24 hours a day of sun, you know? How do you do that? You know? I asked him that, and you know, so if this guy stays, then we have to talk about how to offset the vitamin D3 nutraceutical that we spent some time talking about, you know, synthetic vitamins. And so there's a side effect. I just emailed the group, Monica. I looked up thiamine and synthetic, you know, iron and ascorbic acid, and I think one other one, and I sent it off to you guys from my Hippocrates database, because they're in the drug database. The synthetic vitamins are, with the pharmacology and the side effects and everything, right? Right. Because the B vitamins, remember, are coming from the United States Pharmacopoeia, which is coal mining waste being refined by Pfizer and what's the other big one? Yeah, Merck and Pfizer are refining the coal mining waste and making B vitamins out of it. They're also spraying it the geoengineering. You know, they got a whole racket going on with buying each other's waste. You know, we got a whole racket with that. But let's not go there, because it's kind of a depressing topic. So this is the time of year where if you don't have sunlight, then I'm asked this question a lot: do I do D3? Because I'm against D3 usage, and that's because of Morley Robbins and the root cause protocol work. And what I've seen in lab work in the last 12 years of analyzing people's lab work is a general trend of dropping hemoglobin and hematocrit across the board in all ages and sexes and everything. And that means there's been a drop in oxygen content of the red blood cell over a 12-year period in my personal study, over, you know, hundreds of lab works. But that's because of the synthetic vitamins. And Morley, I was introduced to Morley by an old girlfriend that was in, I mean, I've known her for 12, 13 years now, and she's a toe dipper. She goes out, and she's a Capricorn, so Capricorns are viewed as cardinal signs, right? They go out and they initiate stuff. I'm a Taurus, and so Tauruses are fixed signs. We don't do anything new. We wait for everybody else to do everything new. And then we dip our toe in as the 9th out of 10th person, you know? That's the Taurus energy. So she would come in with like, check this guy out, check this guy out. And I have a pretty good gyroscope, so I had a good feeling about it. And so Morley was presenting something that, to me, this is like 5 or 6 years ago, I couldn't believe what I was reading. He was saying all the COVID guidelines in his world are like absolutely incorrect. Ascorbic acid, synthetic iron, synthetic magnesium, that's ligand bound, synthetic D3, the Bs, the Ds, the Ks, across the board. And he's talking about why. And the conspiracy goes so deep, folks, that even down my rabbit holes of 40 years since I was 15, looking at all this stuff, like, how did I miss this? So guess what the #1 cause of oxidative stress is? Oxidative stress. Guess what the #1 cause? Huh?
Vitamin C or overbreathing.
Overbreathing. That's great.
Dirty electricity.
Dirty electricity. Smoking. Anybody else?
Vitamin C. Processed food.
I like that.
Synthetic vitamins.
Synthetic vitamins.
Fear and stress.
McDonald's. The #1 cause
Cornucopia.
of oxidative stress. Well, then you guys are all correct.
Fear and stress.
But there's something that's underneath that still.
Fear.
Fear is great, because fear causes hypoxia. I've been posting a study. I've seen 2 studies now. I put them on Facebook. Like, hey, folks, you see where they're taking us here? Fear-based universe. I haven't got there yet. It's a metabolism thing, actually, on the cellular level. The #1 cause of oxidative stress. It's a metabolism thing at the cellular level. That's a hint. I never would have guessed. Never would have guessed. Oh, this is so good. This is so good. Nope. That is the best answer that is correct, but it's not the, it's not, if it was a multiple choice, it would be like good answer, but not the perfect answer. Oh my
What
God.
is it?
Okay, you guys, so,
Masks.
okay, so what goes on to the red blood cell? What's in the center of the hemoglobin molecule?
Iron.
Iron, okay. Is iron considered very healthy just to eat on its own?
No.
It causes oxidative stress.
Oh. And they put it on cereal.
That's right. These synthetic forms of it. You know, some guy actually put a magnet on some Cheerios or one of those old cereals, and they draw the metal synthetic vitamins, minerals up into the magnet. Oh yeah, I saw it with my own two eyes.
Iron filings, which makes it have iron.
It's so sickening.
Literally, you can actually do that. You can separate the iron filings from the cereal.
Much smaller particles now.
Oh yeah, they nanize them now, you know, it goes right into your cells. So I have all the PowerPoints and all this too. So if anybody wants to see it, I'm happy to share the links in my Google Drive. That's why what I'm building is this sort of membership system where you can go in into the information network I've established. It's sort of like Green Med Info, but it's, my stuff's a little more clinical, and I like Sayer G's work with Green Med Info for sure. But nobody's talking about actions much still. And so that's kind of what my contribution is the actions of things. Is it warming, cooling? You know, is it tonifying?
Right.
You know, is it anabolic, catabolic? Does it go up? Does it go down? Does it go over the spleen? Does it go over there? You know, so our body, and oxygen also, that's why we have antioxidants. Oxygen is an incredibly powerful, and it causes us to rust. Hint, hint. So the metabolism of oxygen and iron is the most important component in oxidative stress, according to Morley Robbins.
Wow.
I'm tending to agree with him more and more by what I'm seeing around me, and some things I couldn't add that weren't adding up that are with his work. So he has something called the root cause protocol, or CP. And I've taken some of their trainings and hung around with them enough and given them enough pokey feedback, because, you know, I mean, Deanne knows. She's been to some seminars where I'm at, and I'm not afraid to speak up, you know, and so I poked at her. I poke at people and see if they can take, you know, what do you got? What are you made of, you know? And they took my pokes well as a staff, so I'm now helping them, and I gave them a testimonial, because this is the core of everything to me. I think this is the secret is, so there's an enzyme that nobody talks about, and you can't have it measured in labs, and it's called ferroxidase. And it's this enzyme that manages iron. Your husband will know about it, Carl, Monica. But nobody talks about it much, just like nobody talks about the hepatic portal veins. Nobody talks about the hepatic portal veins. It's central to almost every issue in the pelvis and the legs. Stagnant portal circulation. Nobody talks about it. Same thing with the lymphatic system. It doesn't get enough credit. You know, I mean, hello, folks. The lymphatic system is where our cells shit.
Right.
So why are we not talking about the shit pool that, you know, is in our body?
Right.
And it doesn't move unless we move. You know, that's the client that Constance was telling you about. You know, it's like she's not moving, so her lymph wasn't moving. Now she has, you know, her legs are like normally that big, and they're this big now. You know, it's like, fuck. She wasn't moving. So this ferroxidase enzyme is essential. And there's another mineral element involved in this. And the hint is, maybe Monica or somebody will get it. The hint is this mineral is also part of the vitamin C, the whole food vitamin C complex. Pardon? This mineral is part of a vitamin complex that's also involved in iron and oxygen metabolism. And I never would have guessed this either. Hold on, one at a time.
Calcium?
Nope.
Magnesium?
Nope.
Zinc?
Nope. Nope. See? You guys see?
Selenium.
No. Nobody's got it yet. I love this. These are all smart people. This is copper. This is copper.
Yes.
It's copper.
Copper.
Yeah. Copper is involved in all these protein enzymes that are involved in the metabolism of ATP and oxygen and iron. Every one of them involves copper. And what have we been steered away? So when we take zinc, we chelate copper out of our body. We take ascorbic acid, it chelates copper out of our body. When we take vitamin D3, it interferes with copper metabolism.
Wow.
And they've known about this, right?
Right?
So they've steered us over into hypoxia. And what's COVID? Hypoxia. And you look at Furstenberg work, the invisible rainbow, and electrification of the planet. And like James says, it's just a slow cook.
Yeah. Well,
it's just a slow cook, you know?
Travels 1,000 times faster than
What does?
Mixture. A frequency travels through the body 1,000 times faster than a chemical reaction.
Right.
Yeah.
That
Right.
was just 1,000.
Just 1,000.
Just 1,000.
You know, that's all.
So there's 160 different things that make a vitamin C.
There's a lot that makes up the whole C complex, but copper is one of the part of the whole C complex. And the other thing about the whole histology of the body is that there's an enzyme that's part of the C complex that also can affect thyroid function. Guess what that's called? You know, Dean? This is from Mark Anderson's work. You know, the back to school stuff. Yeah, okay. Oh, this is like the best is sharing this stuff because I just got hit over the head with it, you know, years ago. And like, ascorbic acid causes DNA damage? What? Yeah, ascorbic acid causes atherosclerosis? I mean, I got the data from Mark Anderson and all that. It was like horrifying to realize that some antioxidants actually aren't that great long-term because they have drug-like effects. So this enzyme as part of the C complex is called tyrosinase, and T3 on your thyroid hormone is based in tyrosine. So there's a weird enzyme in whole food C that affects the metabolism of tyrosine. Now that's fascinating because vitamin C is considered an adrenal food, and the thyroid's part of the I love the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Sound all cool. The HPA axis. I get to over talk everybody so I can feel cool. I used to do that, you know. I just talk over people and it feels all, you know, feel all superior. I just threw out that chemical hydroxybutyrate -3 peon. That's my shadow just came out for a little while, you know. It could. Yeah, it could. I've done that route with some clients, but generally, I was telling Monica that today that you start throwing a lot of thyroid into a person and messing around with their thyroid function without looking at how their circuits handle the energy that's in their being, and it's not a good idea. Until a person knows how to manage their stress, I don't want to pump up their thyroid. I'm going to give them the thyroid protomorphogen from standard process, which is balancing inherently. So if you're too low, it brings it up, and if it's too high, it brings it down. Right. Right. So because that's what happens is the adrenals will drag the thyroid down. And we know that from reverse T3 too. You know, it's a cortisol steal in the thyroid hormone metabolism from T4 to T3. It's this thing called reverse T3. You might not have. We could talk about it actually. Website for that, stopthethyroidmadness.com. Stopthethyroidmadness.com. That's part of it. Yeah, that's part of it. She's an acupuncturist. And Jonty's an acupuncturist. So we got a high level crowd here. I got to watch what I say because they're going to call me out, you know. Too much shadow. So back to the vitamin D. Sorry, I got the tyrosinase. See the digressions are kind of crazy around here. So this metabolism, so these synthetic nutrients and even magnesium, the wrong form of magnesium, will interfere with the metabolism. And it turns out you can measure the minerals in your red blood cell in lab work. So you can get your red blood cell zinc, your red blood cell magnesium, your red blood cell copper. So what is at the center of the chlorophyll molecule, which by the way, is identical to hemoglobin? Magnesium. So magnesium is what ignites the ATP in the red blood cell. So we think about magnesium as kind of yin and relaxing, but it has a role to activate and an enzyme to activate that copper, iron, oxygen thing on the red blood cell, the hemoglobin. And, you know, I went down a lot of rabbit holes and I've studied long and hard for over 30 years and this completely missed me somehow. I was mortified. I was like, man, I gotta keep looking at this. So I'm in about a 2-year process with this group, and I just went through a little mini training called the masterclass with them, and they had a whole thing about mitochondria, and I'm just getting my mind blown at how hot shit I was again, and I don't know anything again. You know, once again, I'm like, God, I thought I knew some really good stuff, and now I'm back to like ground zero on this stuff going, they have been twisted lies within lies within lies. And, oh, look over here. And then, you know, COVID, take vitamin D3 and ascorbic acid and zinc. the very 3 things that chelate copper out of your red blood cell, and you die of hypoxia. Just like the military study. He was telling me that military study.
But they
Yeah.
were, the military study was about masks. If you guys haven't seen it yet, New England Journal of Medicine.
But my point is that they lead you down the road to the destroyed immunity, and you think you're helping yourself, right?
Yeah.
That's the gaslighting clusterfuck.
The group that wore the masks and did all the distancing got sicker with COVID in the military than the group that did no distancing and mask wearing and sanitizing.
And this was during COVID.
During COVID, this was April through July.
Wow.
The study happened and it got published in November and it got buried by the mainstream news.
Of course it
You
did.
can look it up at globalresearch.ca.
Is it on your
and, well,
Facebook? Did you post it on your Facebook?
I have. I posted it on my Facebook.
I'm always trying to find it.
I'm glad this is all public and air, because the National Vaccine Information Center just also posted yesterday the all-cause mortality data for the first 3 quarters of the year. It's the same amount of deaths there was every other year.
We knew that 6 months ago.
But we needed the proof, and now we got the proof. So I went and slammed it on Facebook, and of course got a couple of comments, but
It doesn't-
data's data.
even if you have-
Can't lie with data. Well, what happened was pneumonia and flu dropped 95%. COVID went up 95%. You know, it was a big statistical clusterfuck. I mean, you know.
Thank
Yeah.
God nobody's dying of the flu this year.
I know, isn't that great?
Oh, that's just to say because everybody was isolated.
Isn't that great?
Nobody died of anything else because they were all isolated.
Okay, let's leave. We're gonna leave. Erase chalkboard of consciousness. That's bad thought. Bad thought. Back to the red blood cell stuff. So, wait, we're gonna go there later. We're gonna go there. Okay, but that's a whole. This is not a simple thing. This is, you know. So, what I wanted to go to was, okay, so what's within our control, and how can we help this process? So, look at the small mirrors the large. So this is a metabolic issue at the cellular level where there's just not enough energy. So how many of us, remember we tried to define what adequate energy was last week, I think? Was it in our group? Was it in this?
Yes.
It was in here. So what's adequate energy?
Oh, right. Yeah.
What is adequate energy for each of us? Like, what do you say, I have enough energy? What do you mean by that?
I love your answer. I can repeat it. To
What?
do what our dreams and wishes are. To have enough energy to fulfill our dreams and wishes.
That's enough energy. And anything else is unacceptable to me.
Well, aren't you trying to get someone to say that eat what you're gonna eat and see an hour later if you're more energy or less?
Right,
As well.
Okay.
Right.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
the same
Right.
thing.
right.
No,
Because then you're in your own subjective world and you're not getting external input telling you how you should feel in this model, right?
sure, but you can hyperventilate and.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the questions I ask my clients about energy is, well, how's your energy off caffeine? Because caffeine's a poison. And so you can't keep kicking the tired horse, can you? Caffeine's a plant poison. So, you know, I use it. I had a cup of coffee today, you know, a little tiny 2 tablespoons of my Ticino, and, you know, went over well. But it's a poison. I don't kid myself. So I'm going to be dry and cold afterwards. That's the energetics of what coffee does after its metabolites. It starts off hot and warm, and everything great. You know, I got enough energy to do everything I want to do. And then, you know, and so if you know how to fix it, then you can play in the game a little more. But if you don't know how to fix the energy, like one of my best friends I've known since I was 15, and he's a big surfer, workoutaholic, and calls me up last year. Oh, my hip's aching, and he knows the spiel. He knows what's coming. So I go, you drinking coffee? He goes, fuck, again? You're going to tell me that again? And I go, how many times have I helped you with that? One recommendation. He's like, fuck, okay. So I gave him like 5 supplements and an herbal blend. And I said, give me 2 weeks on this one. I said, just go off coffee for 2 weeks. And he was in, this guy's an animal. And he was in 9.5 out of 10 pain to 0 after 8 days off coffee. No one can ever tell me that coffee is not inflammatory, because I've gotten more people off coffee in this state than probably any other practitioner, because I just say, you know, you're going to die. No, but it's not that bad. But because I've seen a general drop in all persons dropping coffee, 50% of pain levels drop generally. And it's generally musculoskeletal pain, especially joint pain. Why do you think that is? It's an interesting mechanism. Deanna, you can't answer.
Beans burned.
Inflammation.
The what?
once the bean
Inflammation's
gets to a
correct.
certain amount, it forever changes.
Where's the
And it doesn't
acid?
matter how you cook it, it's not going to be good.
That's
Don't
right.
Try it with a green bean.
The green there may be an argument for the green because the antioxidants haven't been roasted. So that's one argument for the green coffee.
It's supposed to be totally different.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's some coffee enemas from green coffee too, and it's stronger. But some of my more kaffa, the really bigger, robust clients, they can do the green coffee enema. Let's talk about TMI's conversation. Just shove it up there, and But when we talk about pain in the distal in medicine, which is the periphery, it's usually caused from inflammation in the center. Like right in Chinese medicine, there was a whole earth element school of doctor, right? Where everything was treated through digestion. Everything was. And that's the point that I'll always make is your choices determine your food intake, and your food intake determines your energy, but it also determines your immunity. And that's the clusterfuck with COVID. Generally 9 out of 10 people I've heard in the last year, they've dropped their self-care and their good diet during COVID. The very thing you shouldn't do.
Yes. I don't know if it's really 9 out of 10, but it's too many. Because I've also talked to a lot of people who say, I'm staying home and exercising and eating great. No restaurants open. I have to make my own food. So there is both.
There is both. And thanks for the counterpoint, because there is. So I'm gonna take it back to the red blood cell metabolism and how it ties in with consciousness. So the way we can help this is to, first of all, go as natural as you can and use, if you're gonna use supplements, then remember your nutraceuticals you use for how long? 3 to 6 months, get off them. And drugs, like I have a client on sleep med and it's like, hey, what's your, another one on an antidepressant. It's like, you got 3 months. What are you gonna do to get off it in 3 months? What's the game plan, Because you're destroying your liver, your kidneys, and your gut flora when you're taking the drugs. At the minimum.
Describe
Your brain.
nutraceuticals.
And your brain. Pardon?
Describe nutraceuticals. I had someone say that.
Okay, so a nutraceutical, we got it over here on the whiteboard. So you have this spectrum. On one side is food, and the other side is drugs. And in herbal medicine, we like to say other ways. Oh,
I was letting her look at it really
Ellie
quick.
wanted to see it. Thank you. I saw, wait a minute. You don't want to see the Skeletor guy. So on the one side you have food, on the other side you can have like certain foods all day, every day, and not have a problem. And then there's toxic drugs where you do the tiniest little dose and you'll die. So those are the two extremes. And in herbal medicine, they're called level 1, and this is level 3. And so you want to stay in level 1 as much as possible because that's the earth frequencies and the natural. So in between the drug and the food-based vitamins are the nutraceutical vitamins, which are your B1s and your B2s and your ascorbic acids and your tocopherols and your cholecalciferols called vitamin D3 and your, what did I forget?
Some herbs.
And so some herbs also lie in that spectrum in the center. Golden seals in that, kavas in that, passion flowers in that, celandine we talked about the gardening class is in that.
Yeah.
So there's some herbs that there's going to be side effects because they have a strong energy. And what I loved about the celandine, remember the guy said,
That's a class 2.
class 2 herb.
Okay. 1, 2, and 3. 3 is deadly and very small amounts.
And 2 is be careful.
Okay.
And 1 is they're just wimpy, generally, but
Wait,
relatively. I wouldn't call rosemary wimpy. They kick your butt. So yeah, a lot of people don't realize that. And Carrie Bone does echinacea every day, but I don't view echinacea like that. I view echinacea more towards level 2 in my role. It's got a use and it's not meant to be taken daily.
Well,
But
it's a beautiful leaf, though.
yeah, celandine. So celandine is one of those plants like, you can take it in small doses mixed in with other herbs and it's a great combo herb, but I digress again. So if you have side effects, then, when you take, say, those 5-hour energies, they have 4,000 times the RDA of vitamin B1 in those. 4,000 times the RDA of thiamine, B1. The main action of B1 is to liberate energy from your food. So thiamine deficiency is associated with fatigue, for sure. It's tied in with this red blood cell thing, almost certainly. And so the trouble then is that we take these, there's a fat-soluble protector in the B complex. Anybody hear about that before?
No.
Water-soluble vitamin, right? Well, it turns out there's a fat-soluble protector for the nerves. It's called vitamin B4. And we don't hear about that. If you look it up on Wikipedia, you'll see pigeon heart block factor. But B4 is the yin part to help protect your nerves from the excessive thiamine. So I had this one client that was on those, those 5-hour energy drinks and the warrior one, what are they called? The warrior one or the monster one? Or monster, all right, yeah, the monster one. And I looked at the label and I was like, dude, how many of these a day? He goes, oh, I do 2 or 3 a day for years. And I was like, and in his sclera, he had just this crisscross chemtrail grid of badness in his upper eye, which is the brain zone. And I'm like, you've potentially damaged your nervous system, dude, with all that fire in the thiamine. Well, it's not just thiamine in that 5-hour energy, it's also caffeine. And it's synthetic caffeine. So it's a good dose of poison they're putting in that guy. And so without the fat soluble activator, which is why I love, again, Standard Process, I'll sing their praises till I die, is because the founder of Standard Process, he kept this stuff intact and at the risk of his own life. Royal Lee was a true American hero. And I'll go to my grave singing his praises because he didn't make a dime. He put it all back into the company and to help the American people. And he was one of these vitamin B4 people talking about the whole food B complex in the 40s and the 50s, folks.
Wow.
Giving lectures to doctors and chiropractors and acupuncturists and saying, the FDA is leading you down the primrose path to death. Yeah. And, I can honor this man, because he's the reason why that I became who I am, because in my early 40s, I was going through a hard male menopause, to be honest. And I thought I was going down. And then the Standard Process line is what brought me back to life. I didn't even want to live. It was so bad. So there was something about getting something that is raw and whole food, including organ meats. That's the whole primal diet thing with Agenus too, that this guy got incredible results, people eating raw meat. I mean, curing incurable cancers. But, you got to eat raw meat.
How raw?
Like raw.
Raw chicken liver and chicken hearts are delicious. They
There
are
you
absolutely
see?
delicious.
She's got it.
Karsten got me started on that.
Yeah, it teaches
Karsten's like a hero in this department. Yeah, Karsten's a hero.
Oh, what about the parasites?
Yeah, that's what I was
I
wondering.
Well-
got it from a local
Wait.
farm,
You're going a little. So parasites they're external to us and they're already in there. So get over it.
I see, so we're.
They're already in there.
Even if we cooked it. It would still be good.
This is the victim stuff versus the pleomorphism stuff. This was Pasteur and Béchamp. This was their big debate. Does the terrain cause the mutation into parasitic behavior by our choices, or is it all external? It's mostly internal, as it turns out. If you live next to a nuclear power plant full of rotting swamp next door, yeah, your exposure level is going to determine some bad health. But I've seen articles in NIH now, they do parasite therapy for autoimmune disorders.
Wow.
Wow.
They're giving worms for asthma
Right.
and curing
Sure.
people.
Because it eats
What's the mechanism of action of that?
yes.
I'm making a point here and you're missing the point. You're missing the point entirely. We have a normal amount of little worms that live inside of us. So what is their function? We have this normal amount of worms that live inside of us. So what's their function? Because if they're in there naturally, they got to have a function because this is God's great kingdom.
Protein is supposed to help us to-
They're eating up rot.
Yeah.
They're eating up rot is what they're doing.
Zach Bush has a great video about parasites. He talks about like how we're more bacteria and parasite than we are human,
Exactly.
and that we think of them as
Get
the
over it.
enemy, but we really just need to live in harmony with them because
Yeah.
they're a part of us.
You got to get over it.
You
And
can't
parasites
change
in our eyeballs and our eyelids and all over our skin and
Yeah.
just like But the problem is the imbalance. The imbalance comes from other things, not the parasite.
We live in they're cooking with this weird electricity. We're not literally living in the Schumann resonance, right? So they've been knocking us off orbit. Like, remember the whole thing about the Gregorian calendar? Nobody thinks about this shit, but we have a 30-day month, 31-day month, a 28-day month, a 30-day month, a 31-day month.
Right, right.
That's not how nature works. Nature has 13 28-day months in a year cycle.
Then you change the time twice a year.
Yeah,
Right. So it keeps, and then we have we have the 2 be English verbs too, right? I am sad, I am happy, I am cold, I am this, I am that. It's just knocking your limbic system in, or I could jump punching your limbic system all day. Oh, I'm sad. Oh, I'm hungry. No, you're not. You have hunger temporarily. Latin is more correct. So there's the Orwellian weird twist in English language. Why choose the to be form of the verb when you're making the language? To manipulate people, that's why.
Yeah.
You know, the priests knew all this shit, you know, and back in the olden day, they knew exactly what they were doing. Let's fuck with them good, those little serfs, you know. Well, we're still the serfs, aren't we? But we're fighting back.
Sometimes we go
Hard.
surfing.
All right, so let's tie this back together here. So one thing you can do is I have a list of rich food sources of nutrients, and you take the high copper foods, and generally high copper foods are also high in zinc because there is a relationship of zinc and copper in the body. And so you want to have the right ratio. You don't want too much copper without zinc, and you don't want too much zinc without copper. And you don't want to take minerals in isolation anyways. Generally, you want to get minerals, you want the whole matrix because everything affects everything. A teacher told me that, and it's like, well, that's not helpful. Everything affects everything. Great. That gets me back to square one, you know. But it's kind of true in this sense where one of Royal Lee's disciples, and I don't think it was Mark Anderson, but he said that someone was asking about calcium metabolism, and the guy would just shrug his shoulders again. Every single vitamin is involved in calcium metabolism. So if you pull on one string, you affect the other 10, you know. And, you know, Chief Seattle talked about that to the white man. You know, you guys are fucking around with the web of life. You know what the hell you're arrogant. You know what you're doing. And they're generally right. So that's A number one. The second one is to get fresh food, because remember, vitamin C occurs, it's the fresh food vitamin. So as soon as you pick that veggie or that fruit, the green beans example I keep using, it drops 85, 90% after 24 hours, the vitamin C content. So as a marker of an action of life, then the vitamin C is very close to sugar. The ascorbic acid part is almost identical to glucose, the ascorbic acid part of the C complex. And so, you know, there's that, the sunlight hits the plant, and then, do I have that? No, it's in a PowerPoint. Just the action of how plant alchemy is. You get the sunlight coming down, you got the roots wicking up the minerals in the water, and you got the warmth, and then they're making carbohydrates out of that. What? That's like the ultimate alchemist. And they're making chlorophyll. They're making their own blood out of that. And then we eat that. That's why the biggest insight I ever got in my life is we need minerals from plants and animals. We do not digest ground up rocks well. So I don't care if it's coral calcium or calcium sulfate, carbonates, oxide, you know, those are your keywords there. They're, you know who?
What about eggshells?
Yeah, we can talk about that in a second. I just want to give honor to one of our old, Janet Lang. Janet Lang, one of Deanne's smiling because she remembers Janet Lang. She was an endocrinology teacher with the Standard Process Line and around. She's very popular, really good teacher. And she said, you could lick the sidewalk and get more calcium than some of these supplements.
Oh, God.
You remember that quote? We had some great, there were two, she was one and then Michael Dobbins was the other. Bless Michael Dobbins' heart, rest in peace, he's dead now. You had the good graces of being with Dobbins. Oh yeah, God, what a man. Truly great individuals. And then we look at this raw thing too about building blood and getting our energy back. Is I do believe that the breath is intimately involved with the mind and at the cellular level too. We can breathe into our cells and down into our perineum. And I mean, you're a big fan of breath, right? And I think the number one reason why we have low energy is because we don't consciously breathe enough, especially inhaling, you know, and really inhaling, really letting go. I'm a bad inhaler. I'm a great exhaler because of, you know, that one breath of fire. But then I realized that was a reflection of my consciousness. I'm used to always giving, in breath is receiving. And those turn-on groups I used to have.
That we're breathing too much.
Breathing too
I
much.
think 90% of people are hyperventilating.
Okay, so we have a good counterpoint here.
Hyperventilation causes low oxygen absorption.
That's the same thing with nutrients. Too much of a synthetic nutrient
So
causes
it's
the
like
very
saying
thing.
that we need to eat more. We don't. We're breathing too much. We need to breathe less.
Breathe more
Breathe
skillfully then
differently.
and slow it down.
We're
Great.
usually breathing above our metabolic need, which causes anxiety and tension and oxidative stress.
Okay, you want to have a talk on one of these
I would
dinners?
give a whole talk. I would love
Okay, let's
to.
do that.
Yeah.
It's
Let's
a real
do-
simple way to do a breath work that's rejuvenating. It's like inhale 5 counts and then through your lower belly and then pull it in your belly towards your spine and fill in your chest,
Mhm.
holding for 7.
Yeah.
Good.
And then
And then
releasing
release.
for 8.
There's yogic techniques on timing all that out. You know, inhale, holding breath in, holding breath out,
Yeah.
inhale rate, exhale rate.
You reset yourself.
So I'm going to add to, so now you just remembered. So the great Babaji, who was like Yogananda's guru. There was a guy who wrote a book about them, and his whole premise in the book was that we have a finite number of breaths in our life, and that we can use them any way we want. So it would make more sense to skillfully breathe slower, so you live longer. I thought that was fascinating. And so that's your argument. It goes back to that argument, right?
Yeah.
Breathe slower and more skillfully, and you'll be on the planet longer because you have a finite number of breaths. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
Well, it's hard when you're trying to recover. When you're like riding a bike up a steep hill,
Yeah.
you can recover, and you can move at a low. Moving slower helps.
The stronger your breath is, though, the slower it is, the more oxygen you
Okay,
can absorb.
you're
You don't
right.
need to
Actually, I
breathe
find
hard.
myself when I'm trying to recover, just breathing steadily
Yeah.
and working through.
So I have another thing to add in. It's from the standard process
Slowly.
line.
Yeah, slowly, yeah.
So you can also have a better, you can have your oxygen metabolism can be more efficient. And so there's a product in the standard process line that really caught my attention years ago. It's called Cataplex E2. And they were using it in heart cases. They were giving it to people. The story that got me intrigued was this guy was, he had a heart attack. And it's one of those crazy ambulance stories, you know, we've heard so many of. And so the guy told the ambulance driver, just take a little longer, and he kept feeding the Cataplex E2 on the way to the hospital. And the guy ended up really not needing the hospital services. You know, they went and tested him out and whatnot. But so this form of vitamin E, it turns out, Roy Lee was really into isolating stuff. He's found these 3 forms of vitamin E, and this one, which is really odd because the main ingredient in the product is cow testicle extract, actually. The first ingredient is bovine orchic glandular extract from the cytoplasm only, so there's no hormone in it, but that's another long conversation. They call it a cytosol extract in their line. So nut juice for a heart attack?
Nut juice?
Cayenne is supposed to work for that.
No, what it does is cow testicle extract brings oxygen into the cell.
Wow.
And so,
Wait,
so there's a reason why men like, you know, turkey nuts and all that, because you get all oxygenated and feeling pretty testosterone full, you know. And anyways, where am I going with all that?
Did you say turkey nuts?
You said turkey. Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
You did. How did they get turkey nuts?
Down in McClintock's in San Luis Obispo, where I went to college for a lot of years, there was this restaurant called McClintock's, and they served turkey nuts.
wow.
You
Were
know,
they really
I-
that,
I
or
do-
they like?
I think they were cow. I think it was cow
So,
testicle.
I-
I think it was
I-
just a nickname for cow testicle.
I've cleaned a lot of fish, and I've eaten a lot of live fish. And it's
Still beating?
hell yes. You can take it out of your hand for a while, you know, and then put it back in the mouth, and it starts bleeding.
Wow.
What that?
Fish hearts.
Fish heart.
You know, when you fillet a fish,
No, when you're cleaning
yeah, when you're cleaning it.
Cleaning it.
Yeah.
Keep
You
feeding.
take the heart
it,
out?
eat it. That's raw meat. It's alive.
Oh, yeah, that's as good as it gets,
It's
baby.
nuts. Like a salmon, it's like
It's as good as it gets.
It wasn't quite the size of a peanut.
Was it gritty?
It was alive. It was like an oyster.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it was like an oyster. No. I've eaten lots of fish. Such a good.
Jeff, just think of your karma.
You know, but
He's got the heart of a salmon.
he does. He does.
Well, that's an amazing thing because the heart of the salmon is the most dynamic of all.
Well, I'm just saying, whenever you clean a fish that was alive, you have an opportunity.
This is
to
why
cook
he
heart.
spends so much time swimming upstream.
Yeah. Yeah. So to your point though, that's the raw meat, and raw meat has vitamin C in it. So does raw milk.
How about deep down dirt?
Oh, yeah.
Under the soil. Full of everything.
So I had the same experience you had, because I had this girlfriend that we were out on Its Beach one day, and the little, what are the little fish that swim in? They have the big run, the little silvery fish, or sardines.
Anchovy.
The runyon, yeah. There was a little run, and then so she was running down to the beach, and this was a raw meat girl, and she was picking up the fishes and swallowing them whole, like they were squirming around. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm loving these fishes. They're free, you know." And she goes, "Try one." And so I just swallowed one down. I swear to God, I was high for 3 hours. Like, wow, this is really cool.
It's like, wow,
This is
real food.
This is real food.
Finally.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why dolphins do so well. I mean, they're
So
eating
was
all
it
the
No doubt. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
they're eating live food.
They're eating live food, you know?
time.
Yeah.
So there were no bugs in it?
Yeah, but, you know, I figured I was already, you know. I didn't even really want, I just kind of gave it one quick chew and swallowed because I was it's like, ugh, thing's still squirming in there.
Yeah,
Oh.
not fun to see
No, it's not. That's the quote of the night. It's not fun to chew squirm.
Oh, God.
I thought you said sperm.
Ooh, that's pretty
That
good.
seems like a really large sperm.
Good shit. Yeah, so
It's a lot of fun to talk about it.
that is the remedy, but the remedy goes deeper than that too. Is you know, we're so programmed, and the remedy actually comes in recognizing that we're programmed, and that wow. I mean, when I realized I needed to eat organ meats, it was like I knew I probably wasn't going to be able to. So then I went to the standard process line because there's organ meats in all their products, and then I do like the liver pâtés. Thanks for Cindy for mentioning that. You know, the raw. One of my clients would they would soak their liver either in orange juice or raw milk overnight, and they would slice it really thin, you know, the liver really thin, and then the flavored liver, the milk I guess draws out the bad smell, and I guess the orange juice kind of acidifies it and different actions on it. But
It's fresh. It doesn't smell at all. It's just delicious.
I know that we get it fresh enough, probably, right? So like my father grew up eating liver, like liver and onions was a big thing, you know, and he even had frog's legs and went, oh, I love frog's legs, you know, and it tastes like chicken. It's like everything else, you know. Laugh out loud. So I want to introduce that about the red blood cell because I believe it ties in also with our own inability to metabolize oxygen on the macro level too, of, you know, either excessively breathing or just breathing out of harmony with how we could breathe, right? And that was one of my greatest realizations probably 30 years ago was I can control my mind with my breath. Learned that long ago is that if you're focusing on your breath, your mind is going to go more quiet. But you have to have the wherewithal to realize you need to summon your breath, right? Because if you're asleep at the wheel, your tools are worthless. All right? Because that's the dance. We're asleep, and then we're awake. We're asleep, we're awake. We're asleep, we're awake. We're asleep for days on end. Where have I been the last 3 days? You know that one? You ever have that? Like, if I fall asleep now for more than a few hours, I kind of come out of it and go, oh God, that hurts. You know, that contracted, sticky, confused. I had at the farmer's market, got triggered. Drew saw the end of it actually. On Wednesday, got triggered and yelled at the farmer's market, one of the managers. And I'm still at PTSD from that interaction, Drew. So that's not enlightened action. As my teacher taught me, enlightened action leaves no trace in your being. You know, so I had a trace for 2 days. It's like, okay, next time I'll learn the boundary a little more skillfully, but not go into right in her face yelling, you know. Which was needed because she needed to see that they're standing for something that's against the Constitution, which is wearing a mask. And so she needs to see that kind of conviction, because that's the feedback I'm getting from people is when, like, James has so much conviction in his stuff that it helps me know, like, this guy's not shaky. You know, when I talk to this guy, it's like I can feel the solidity, and that's what people get from me is like, my convictions are strong because of the experiences I've had. I didn't want to be the freak that saw auras in college, but I did. You know, I'm sitting there at day 25 and, oh, the teacher's got green auras coming out of his hands. And I got this voice in my head going, oh God, I'm going to be one of those people. When I'm 25 years old, you know, like, it's exactly what came in, James. I'm in this big, huge class, and the teacher went like that, and this green, yellow aura shot out of his hand, and I kind of rubbed my eyes. I'm like, oh God, no, it's back. So I was seeing spirits when I was a kid, you know, and I kind of pushed it all away. And then suddenly it just came gushing back in about 25, 26. I was like, oh God, I'm going to be one of those woo-woo people. Barbara Brennan and Hands of Light had the same experience, you know. I like these are my favorite. The NASA scientist, Barbara Brennan, to the Hands of Light, energy healing, and she was a NASA scientist, and the same thing happened to her. Started seeing auras, and she's just going, "Oh God, I'm gonna be one of those guys." So I think a few of you can relate. Like everything that came into my life came in unannounced and involuntary. My teacher Adyashanti said the same thing happened to him. He didn't ask to have the experiences he had, and that's our dharma, right? We get shown our mission, our life, and we either contract and run away, or we go in and fully dharma and embody our life, our earth theater. You know, we're in earth theater here, so be a good director and producer of your earth theater creation. Can't do it when you're asleep at the wheel, though. Life does it for you. Right. So that's why I'm teaching this stuff, is because I've been following these yearly cycles now through really the Chinese cosmology and the native cosmology of like, okay, what do you do in the fall? What do you do in the winter? So we'll make this practical, then I'll stop. It's actually only 9:09, so I'm not going too long tonight. Yeah, so the color of winter is dark. And so thank you for the prompt. This is, Monica was pressing some herbs earlier. This is the leftover press from the mash of prepared Romania root. And Romania is the Latin name for foxglove. So our English American foxglove is extremely toxic. It's a level 3 herb where you take 1 drop. And that's what they make digitalis, the heart medicine, out of, is foxglove.
Oh, wow.
So this is the root of the Chinese foxglove. And I've grown it. It's an adorable little plant, has almost an orchid-looking flower. Our American foxglove is beautiful too, but this plant takes the cake. And they prepare it, and it ends up black like this. And so it nourishes liver and kidney yin, they talk about. And so, and this is a level 1. You could sip on this all day and nothing would happen. We're not going to Jonestown. We'll pass that around. There's the issue of the arsenic left over in the herb, you know, from Prop 64? They have all the labels, you know. Every time I buy herbs now.
Celandine, it's fine. It takes an hour to react. So.
You know, you'd be dead in an hour, and that's all. No, there's a good example of a level 3 herb that there's a movie about it called Into the Wild. Anybody see that?
Oh yes.
Yes,
Good example of not messing around with lupin. The guy literally starved to death.
Yeah.
That's how he died. Yeah. So then, from eating unprocessed lupin, the natives would soak them in salt water, 3 or 4 rounds of soaking and, you know, and rinsing, and then they would eat the seeds because the salt would leach out the toxin. But if you eat lupin seeds without processing them properly, then your body can no longer makes digestive secretions, I guess, and you just don't absorb food anymore, and you slowly die.
Wow.
So the whole movie's about this guy's process out in this van in the middle of, where is it, British Columbia or something?
Yeah, it was.
It's beautiful
It was a
setting.
sad movie.
Oh my God, I'm sorry I introduced it, but it's a good point about a level 3 herb, you know, like,
Yeah.
you don't mess around with stuff like that unless you know what you're doing, you know. This is another safe one, but you don't want to eat the whole jar. So this is it's a Russian shilajit, we've talked about this, but the Russians call it mumijo. Or maybe I don't know, M-U-M-I-J-O. And I bought it from this eBay provider. And I wanted to get it in bulk because shilajit it's the poop from the mountains. Shilajit is mountain poop. So imagine you've got, let's see, big mountain, and there's rain that falls on it, and the trees that grow on it, you know, they compost. And so the rot from all the rocks and the animals and stuff that dies on the mountain ends up into the mountain crevices and works its way down to the bottom. And in India, in Ayurveda, they have this compound called shilajit, S-H-I-L-A-G-I-T. And it's very loaded with minerals, but it's also absolutely loaded with humic and fulvic acid. But you hear it's all the rage, you know, and then guess what? Well, they're making that shit synthetically sometimes. And you know what? You get your fulvic acid and humic acid, compost your food properly. And then use that compost on your soil, and you have all the humic and fulvic acid you need. Because it's not about the chemistry, remember? It's about what are humic and fulvic acid doing in nature? They're a byproduct of a process, aren't they? It's called alchemy. It's making life out of death is what it is. The composters are making new life out of death, which is the theme of right now in this season. We've got to drop this year to enter the new year with our goals, right? And that's what this stuff helps with, because minerals help calm the nervous system, no doubt about it. And this is a whole food mineral complex with humic and fulvic acid in with it. So I have 10 of these, and shilajit comes in like 500 milligram tablets. So we're going to make little tablets out of this stuff and sell it for dirt cheap because we can. And then I got some from Banyan, and they weren't too bad, but it was still like 20 or 30 bucks for a month's supply. And it's like, man, it's our survival stuff. Because if you run out of minerals and whatnot, you can go to the ocean and refine that in this also. So black is the color of winter. And why do you think black is the color of winter? No light. Why else?
The soil's rejuvenating.
Good, great.
Less heat.
Less heat, right?
Less plants.
Less plants, less life.
Less light.
But what are colors?
Oh, all the colors.
But what, it's all the colors, right? But what are colors ultimately? Light.
Fractions of light.
Light and frequency.
Yes.
Light and frequency. So some of these old macrobiotic teachers, Herman Ayahara in his book, Acid and Alkaline, he has this color spectrum and how, so I was always curious, John T. and Joanne, about how colors affected the organ systems, you know? Well, it turns out it's through the frequency. Green has the frequency of the liver. Red is the frequency of the fire element, small intestine, heart. White is the frequency of the lungs and the colon. And I was like, that's it. It's this frequency thing, right? So black is the frequency for the urinary system and the kidneys and the bladder and the bones and the brain. Because those are the darkest parts of the body anyways, right? They're at the very center, right? The spine is like right in the middle of us, so it's really dark in there. Yeah, it's pretty dark inside there. I mean, there probably be a couple little light bulbs in there, I'm sure, if you know what I mean. But so in the water element, I took the more liberal view of saying, you know, the brain, the bone marrow, the bones, the kidney, and the bladder are all part of the water element in the Chinese tradition. And so the black color is a frequency that nourishes those. And so what I'll do is I'll lead a cleanse, not before Christmas, but I lead a cleanse when the light starts to increase around the second week of January. And we do a winter cleanse, which involves soups and broths and cooked food a little more. But you take the products that nourish the kidney and the urinary and the spine and the brain, and we do a brief assessment to see, you know, where you're at. That's the way my cleanses work. And then we'll do a liver cleanse in the spring for the wood element. Then we do a small intestine cleanse in the summer. And then we do a colon cleanse in the fall. But all the while looking at the particular person's imbalances, because if they need to do a small intestine cleanse, because that's when the small intestine's dominant during the summer, its energy is up. So it makes more sense to cleanse it then versus the winter when it's sort of dormant in terms of the energetic frequency stuff. So the black color will go to these organs. So, you know, black's generally carbon too. So that's one way to tie it together is, I can see that the audience is fading. So you use, if you're looking at elements to use in your cooking, there's salt. So summertime, it's less salt, higher potassium, and less sodium. And there's more fat and protein in the winter. Generally, we want more anyways because the cold weather. And cooking your food a little more, so more cooked food, but trying to stay that level where we talked about this raw thing, right? And 51% based on Howell's work. And that Cohen got buried by the press 2 years ago. So you want us to try and get raw in, and you'll know because your energy will start to drop anyways. You know, when I get too much raw now, too much cooked now, my body just goes, fuck, I'm so sluggish. And then I get some raw and my energy goes back up. And each of us has to sort of find our way through that. Because remember, it's all about how you feel an hour after you eat. And also, you know, if your bowels are working the next day, you know, so should we close on that note? It'd be a good place to end. Your bowels shouldn't, so you too can have a proper bowel movement with Health Alchemy. Actually, final story along those lines. I was cooking for 100 men at a Mankind Project retreat, and every meal had chia seeds in it. We had chia seed flatbread, chia seed cereal, chia seed pancakes.
Is it bad to cook chia seeds because the omegas makes them unstable?
The whole seed is just a long story, but no, it's not bad. You don't want to overcook them, but ideally they're raw. Yeah, ideally they're raw. So, but we had chia everything, and then this is how I know shit works. So this leader guy comes up to me. Got the puns
I
going.
mean, it'll make you shit, but it might not give you the omegas that you think you're getting, where you might be getting a rancid oil.
Yeah, I hear your counterpoint, but I'm a results guy, so I'm just gonna tell you the results. I go right to results. I don't care about any of that right now. Yeah, you're gonna get more omegas from the raw seeds for sure, and you might damage them a little bit, but the oil is really the problem with that. So this guy comes up to me and you know, unannounced, and I didn't particularly like the guy that much either. He's a big leader and big ego, but hey, Craig, come here. What? won't say his name, and he can come over, and he's usually like always asking for something, and he puts his arm around me, and I'm like, and this is a big man, 6'6", 240, and I'm like, why is he putting his arm around me, you know? He goes, Craig, I really liked your cooking this weekend. I haven't had a bowel movement like that in 5 years. So I love that chia. So I became known as the chia chef from there forward 4 or 5 years ago. So you too can have a chia bowel movement by have a chia shit. And we will say too in final closing that Cindy is right. Probably better to have this stuff raw. But you know, if you're gonna have fresh ground chia flour or rancid stale wheat flour, I'm taking the chia flour. And we'll sign off with that.